There is an ongoing genocide against Indigenous people, including in both the US and Canada, that primarily targets Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits. Today, May 5th, is the day that we honor and remember the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives and try to raise awareness about the ongoing violence and silence currently plaguing our community. In the US, Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than any other demographic, and more than 4 out of 5 Indigenous women have experienced violence in their lifetime. This crisis isn't something of the far past, but here and now. Many wrongly place the blame for this violence onto Native men due to old anti-Indigenous stereotypes, but statistically an overwhelming amount of these cases are found to be committed by white men who live primarily outside of Indigenous communities. Of course, we can't talk about the violence and exploitation towards Indigenous communities without talking about the exploitation of the land, because the two go hand in hand. There is a long, well-documented history of land theft, destruction, and exploitation, and higher rates of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Especially when it comes to pipelines, there are statistics that show a spike in MMIW cases alongside man camps set up to build these pipelines. Meaning the workers who are hired to build these pipelines often are the ones committing these acts of violence towards Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits. Police have done little to nothing about this crisis. Often themselves play a role, whether that be through gross negligence, purposely ignoring and not investigating Indigenous cases, or actively taking part in this violence themselves. Don't have to look very far for examples either. Just look at Starlight Tours, a horrific practice that not many people outside of our communities know about. Police will pick up random Indigenous people, often Indigenous men, and drop them off on the outskirts of town in the snow and cold, leaving them to freeze to death alone. These deaths, as well as many others, often go unreported and uninvestigated. In my own personal experience, the police and the government are usually very aware trafficking, exploitation, and violence is occurring, but little to nothing is ever done. As a small child, I survived years of physical and emotional torture, starvation, assault, and exploitation by a man who saw us as less than human simply for being Native. The local police, as well as CPS, had been made aware multiple times about what was happening to us, but nothing, absolutely nothing was done to save us until years later when it was almost too late. All my life, I wondered why that people knew that we were left alone. Now, as an adult, I understand that my case is one of thousands, if not more, and part of a larger systemic issue, intended result of hundreds of years of colonialism. Please don't just watch this and go about your day. Educate yourselves. Speak up about what is happening. Demand your local representatives address cases in your own communities. Do more, care more about our lives than just one day a year. This is our daily reality. We don't